Thanks for clicking on the video. In part one, I talked about the first stages of getting the aviary put together. But in step four, I really started to think about how could I make it work. I asked the experts for advice, everybody I could find, and I researched obvious sources for solutions and also less obvious sources. So even though this was new to me, it wasn't new to people who are expert breeders or clubs such as NFSS, hobbyists on Facebook and other social media sites, and even material suppliers, pond products, lumber stores, and videos from vivarium builders and people who keep reptiles were helpful. I made tons of sketches. I made a binder of all different kinds of ideas. And one thing that was super helpful was to get an application that let me build a prototype on my laptop so I could visualize the concept a little bit better and work out a lot of the details. And then in the next step, I looked around for where I could put the aviary. I thought it might work at this spot where we dug out an old roadie. It was close to the house. It was not used for anything. It had decent sun and shade, as well as I can get in the Pacific Northwest. There was access from all sides for both building and viewing. And I thought the slope could be leveraged to help with cleaning and just to make the terrain a little bit interesting. I was really having trouble pulling the trigger though, so on step 6, I did a rough layout of the space. I figured, well, I can start digging it out a little bit and, well, maybe I can lay some timbers down and just kind of see how it would work. And that's what I did. Didn't commit to anything, but I just started kind of getting closer and closer to visualizing not only how it could work, but how might I start assembling it. Here the timbers are dry fit, just stacked on top of each other. In step 7, I started building the structure with the foundation. This is something I had to get right. I live in a place where it rains a lot, so I had to manage the water outside the aviary. And we have tons of critters that would like to get into the aviary and wreak havoc. So the entire foundation is wrapped in 1/4-inch mesh rodent screen. The bottom of the aviary is essentially a pond with a big long drain so that any water from inside the aviary exits downhill. On top of the pond liner are 4x6 timbers built up like a planter box, and the pond liner, underlayment felt, and screen are all wrapped up around and secured to the timbers. With the foundation done, 6x6 cedar posts and 4x6 beams formed the beginnings of this fancy shed that's built on top of the foundation. You can see I used some pretty heavy-duty hardware because the plexiglass roof is heavy and we do occasionally get snow. In fact, we got the most snow ever when I was building this. So everything is plexiglass wall except for one insulated corner where the warming area will be and where the solar fan will be. With the basic building done, the next part of step 7 was to build access, and the hardest thing here was to make sure it was critter proof, primarily for mice. I built 2 sliding doors, one to access the warming area and one to get into the main area. Both doors also had a window built in with rodent screen on the inside and insect screen on the outside. In between, a sheet of plexiglass could either be put in or taken out to manage ventilation. In addition, one of the 4x8 plexiglass panels was a sliding window, and 3 of the eaves were also windows that were on hinges for more ventilation. The last structural elements are the screened entry, completely rodent screened, and stairs for access from the house. From there, I could move inside to start working on some of the interior features. In step 8, I concentrated on the warming area. The warming area is a much smaller space. It's more efficient to heat and light. So I envisioned a cage inside this smaller area with its own lighting controls, fan, heat, and ventilation. There was a little bit of unused space below the cage, so I just made a little storage area that was accessible from outside the aviary. And because of the orientation of the cage, I needed to have a door into the main area to access the cage tray And then I just made a little pass-through tunnel between the cage and the main aviary so the birds could come and go. In step 9, I started working on the interior features. In my research, I discovered a two-part epoxy that is used in aquariums and in zoos. It's very tough, it's easy to work with, and you can form it over things like recycled foam and packing materials and PVC, and I use that to make the hardscape and rocks and trees. And then plastic or silk foliage completes the plants. There are also live plants in the aviary, bamboo and mosses and grasses, but the artificial um, materials are easy to clean and disinfect. They're easy to rearrange. They're easy to care for, and the birds can't destroy them. So I felt that was a decent solution for a lot of the problems that I wanted to take care of in the aviary. The plants themselves are inserted into holes in the epoxy, so they can be pulled out and rearranged and cleaned. The live plants are in pots, and they can be removed to recover after they've been snacked on. So what you see here is the pond liner with spray foam partially covered in the epoxy. The pink is leftover insulation foam sheet from a construction project that raises the elevation and gives a little bit more interest to the terrain. Step 10 is to evaluate, how did I do against my goals? I wanted a decent sized aviary for a mixed group of finches. I wanted it to have a garden feel with easy access to lots of viewing perspectives from outside, but also from inside. I was hoping for a really interesting environment for the birds with opportunities for them to fly and forage and hide and interact with each other or not interact. I wanted to make sure that I could sit inside and access the things I needed to for servicing and cleaning, but I didn't want anybody else getting in. Mice, raccoons, hawks, mosquitoes, etc. I wanted natural light as well as lighting and temperature controls and ventilation controls. So I did okay. Rev 1.0 worked really pretty well. And the birds moved in, and then I moved them back out again. So in future videos, you'll see what I did for 2020.